Marcus Chen had always been good with his hands. Growing up on a struggling farm on Earth's outer colonies, he learned early that when something broke, you fixed it yourself or went without. His fingers could coax life back into dying engines, mend torn fabrics so well you couldn't see the repair, and somehow always knew exactly how much pressure to apply when working with delicate electronics. That skill had earned him a spot on the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge as a maintenance technician. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well enough to send money back to his family, and he got to see parts of the galaxy most humans never would. The ship carried ambassadors and trade representatives to dozens of alien worlds, building the fragile bridges that kept peace between species. Marcus never expected to be anything more than background crew. He fixed what broke, stayed out of the way during important meetings, and counted down the days until his contract ended. The diplomatic corps barely noticed him, which suited him fine. He had learned long ago that being invisible was often safer than being seen. The Harmony's Edge had been in orbit around Zephyria Prime for 3 days now. The blue-green world below looked peaceful from space, its silver cities gleaming like jewels against the continental masses. The Zephyrians themselves were a proud people, tall and elegant with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their technology was advanced, their culture ancient, and their political situation currently very unstable. Princess Lyreley was dying, and no one knew why. Marcus heard the gossip in the crew quarters. The princess was the youngest daughter of the Zephyrian High King, beloved by her people and considered one of the most brilliant minds of her generation. 3 months ago, she had fallen ill with a mysterious condition that baffled their best healers. Her life force was slowly fatting, and every passing day brought her closer to death. The king had reached out to every ally, every trading partner, every species known for their medical knowledge. Teams of doctors from a dozen worlds had examined the princess. None could help. Now the Zephyrians were growing desperate, and that desperation was making some of their people angry. Anti-alien sentiment was rising on the planet below. "It's getting ugly down there," Chief Engineer Rodriguez had told Marcus that morning. "The protesters outside the healing centers are blaming us, saying foreign interference caused the princess's illness. Command's worried about riots." Marcus had nodded and gone back to his work. Political tensions weren't his problem. His job was to keep the ship's systems running, and a faulty atmospheric recycler in Section 7 wasn't going to fix itself. The recycler was tucked away in a narrow maintenance corridor, the kind of cramped space that only technicians ever saw. Marcus had been working on it for 2 hours, his tools spread across the deck plates, when the ship's intercom crackled to life. "All senior staff to Briefing Room Alpha. Priority 1 meeting in 15 minutes. Marcus ignored it. He wasn't senior staff. He was elbow-deep in recycler components, trying to figure out why the molecular filters were running at only 60% efficiency. The problem was subtle, probably a calibration issue in the... "Mr. Chen, please report to Briefing Room Alpha immediately." Marcus blinked. They wanted him in the meeting. That had never happened before. He gathered his tools, sealed the recycler access panel, and made his way through the ship's corridors feeling increasingly nervous. Briefing Room Alpha was normally reserved for the most important meetings. The long conference table could seat 20 people, and the holographic display system could project star charts, technical diagrams, or real-time communications with planetary governments. When Marcus entered, he found Ambassador Patricia Voss at the head of the table, looking grim. Around her sat the ship's senior officers, the diplomatic attachés, and Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's chief medical officer. "Mr. Chen," Ambassador Voss said as he took an empty seat near the back. "Thank you for joining us. I'm sure you're wondering why you're here." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am. The situation planetside has deteriorated. Princess Lyreley's condition has worsened dramatically in the last 6 hours. The king's advisors estimate she has perhaps 12 hours left to live." The ambassador's expression was tense. "The political ramifications of her death could be severe. There are already calls for expelling all alien presence from Zephyrian space." "I understand the gravity of the situation," Marcus said carefully, "but I'm not sure why you need me." Dr. Kim leaned forward. "Marcus, I've been going through the personnel files, looking for anyone with any kind of medical training, alternative healing knowledge, anything we might have missed. Your file mentions you grew up on an agricultural world." "Yes, ma'am, New Queensland." Farm communities often develop folk remedies, traditional healing methods. Did you learn anything like that growing up? Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Dr. Kim, I'm a maintenance tech. I fix machines, not people. I think you're overestimating. We're not overestimating anything, Ambassador Voss interrupted. We're desperate. The king has agreed to let our medical team make one final examination of his daughter. Dr. Kim will lead that team, but she wants to bring anyone who might offer a fresh perspective. With respect, ma'am, I don't have any medical training. I know how to treat cuts and broken bones from farm accidents, but this princess has a condition that stumped doctors from 12 different species. I can't possibly. Maybe you can't, Dr. Kim said. But you grew up poor, right? You learned to make do with whatever was available. Sometimes that perspective is valuable. Sometimes the simple solution is the right one. Marcus wanted to argue further, but something in the ambassador's expression told him this wasn't really a request. Yes, ma'am. I'll do whatever I can to help. 2 hours later, Marcus found himself on the surface of Zephyria Prime for the first time. The royal palace was a marvel of crystalline architecture that seemed to grow from the living rock of the mountain it crowned. Spires of blue-white crystal reached toward the sky, and the walls hummed with a faint harmonic resonance that made the air itself feel alive. The diplomatic party was escorted through halls lined with guards in ceremonial armor. The Zephyrians were even more impressive up close than in the briefings. They stood nearly 7 feet tall on average, with elongated limbs and faces that managed to be both alien and beautiful. Their skin held a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water. But the guards looked tense, and Marcus noticed how their hands rested near their weapons. The palace felt like a place under siege. King Thalorian received them in a chamber that could have held a small starship. The ceiling disappeared into shadow high above, and the walls were covered in flowing script that seemed to move and shift when Marcus wasn't looking directly at it. The king himself was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, his skin pale and translucent with age, his eyes holding depths of sorrow that made Marcus's chest ache. Ambassador Voss, the king said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls resonate. I am grateful that you have come. My physicians tell me that my daughter has perhaps 8 hours remaining. Your Majesty, Ambassador Voss replied with a formal bow, we will do everything in our power to help. Dr. Kim has brought our most advanced medical equipment, and we've assembled a team with diverse experience. The king's gaze moved over the humans, lingering on Marcus. I confess I do not understand why you have brought a technician. Marcus felt his face burn. He started to step back, but Dr. Kim put a gentle hand on his arm. Sometimes, Your Majesty, a different perspective can reveal solutions that specialists miss. Mr. Chen has experience with complex systems that others might overlook. The king studied Marcus for another long moment, then nodded. Very well, follow me. They were led deeper into the palace, through corridors that grew quieter and more solemn with each step. Finally, they reached a pair of doors carved from single pieces of crystal. Beyond them lay the princess's chambers. Princess Lyrale lay on a bed that seemed to be grown rather than built, its surface conforming perfectly to her body. She was smaller than her father, more delicately built, but even in her illness, she radiated a kind of ethereal beauty. Her skin had lost most of its natural luminescence, appearing gray and dull. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. Around her bed stood a dozen Zephyrian healers, their long fingers moving in complex patterns above her body. Streams of soft light flowed from their hands, but the light seemed weak and scattered. Marcus could see the exhaustion in their faces. They had been working for hours with little effect. Dr. Kim immediately began setting up her equipment, while the Zephyrian healers explained what they had tried. Marcus listened with growing amazement to the list of treatments: molecular restructuring, quantum cellular therapy, temporal healing techniques that existed only in theoretical papers on Earth. These people had access to medical technology that humanity could barely dream of. And none of it was working. While Dr. Kim ran her scans, Marcus found himself drawn to the princess. Up close, he could see that her condition was worse than he had imagined. Her skin was not just pale, it was beginning to develop a crystalline quality, as if she were slowly turning to stone. Her fingers had hardened to the point where they looked like carved quartz. It's cellular crystallization, one of the Zephyrian healers explained to Dr. Kim. Her life force is being converted to inert crystal matrix. We have slowed the process, but we cannot reverse it. Marcus stared at the princess's hand. The crystallization was most advanced in her extremities, spreading slowly toward her core. He had seen something like this before, but not in a person. In machines. Specifically in the biomechanical components that some alien technologies used. "Dr. Kim," he said quietly, "can I ask something?" She looked up from her scanner readings. "What is it?" "Has anyone considered that this might not be a disease?" The room fell silent. One of the Zephyrian healers made a sound that might have been offense or surprise. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Kim said carefully, "I understand you want to help, but—" "No, wait." Marcus stepped closer to the bed, studying the princess's crystallized fingers. "I work with biomechanical systems every day. This pattern, the way the crystallization is spreading, it looks like what happens when a biomechanical component tries to interface with incompatible hardware." King Thalorian moved closer. "Explain." Marcus swallowed hard. He was way out of his depth, but something about the pattern nagged at him. Biomechanical systems use living tissue integrated with crystal matrices for processing and memory storage. When the interface is stable, the biological and crystalline components work together. But if there's an incompatibility, if the crystal tries to integrate with biological tissue that can't support the connection, you get runaway crystallization. "Are you suggesting," the king said slowly, "that my daughter has somehow been infected with incompatible technology?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But the pattern fits, and if I'm right, then this isn't really a medical condition. It's an engineering problem." Dr. Kim was frowning at her scanner. "Marcus, her readings don't show any technological integration, no artificial components, no foreign materials." "What about at the quantum level? Could something be interfacing with her cellular structure in a way that wouldn't show up on standard scans?" There was a long pause while Dr. Kim adjusted her equipment. The Zephyrian healers watched with expressions Marcus couldn't read. Finally, Dr. Kim looked up with wide eyes. "There's something there, quantum resonance patterns in her neural tissue that don't match anything biological. They're trying to establish some kind of connection." Marcus felt his heart racing. "If I'm right, then the crystallization isn't the disease, it's a symptom. Something is trying to interface with her biology and her body is rejecting the connection." "But how do we stop it?" the king demanded. Marcus looked at the princess's crystallized hand again. In his experience, when a biomechanical interface failed, there were usually only two solutions: find a way to make the components compatible or break the connection entirely. "I might be able to help," he said quietly, "but I'd need to touch her." The entire room erupted. The Zephyrian healers stepped forward in alarm, several guards moved toward their weapons, and even Dr. Kim looked shocked. "Absolutely not," one of the healers said. "No alien has ever touched a member of the royal family. The contamination risk alone." "She's dying anyway," Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. "And if I'm right, direct contact might be the only way to disrupt the quantum interference." King Thalorian raised a hand for silence. "Explain." Marcus took a deep breath. Biomechanical interfaces are sensitive to electrical fields, quantum states, even emotional resonance. Human neural patterns are completely different from Zephyrian ones. If I can establish direct contact, my bioelectrical field might be incompatible enough with whatever's trying to connect to her that it breaks the interface. "And if you're wrong," the king asked, "then I've wasted a few seconds and nothing changes." The king stared at his daughter's still form. "And if you're right, then maybe the crystallization stops and her body can start healing itself." The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, King Thalorian nodded. "Do it." Marcus approached the bed on unsteady legs. The princess looked so fragile, so young. Her hand felt cold when he gently took it in his own, the crystallized skin strange and hard against his palm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus felt something that made his hair stand on end, a sensation like touching a live wire, but deeper, more fundamental. Energy flowed between them, alien and vast and utterly foreign. The princess's eyes snapped open. Light erupted from her skin, brilliant and warm, washing over the entire room. The crystallization on her hand began to crack and flake away like old paint. Color flowed back into her face, and her breathing deepened. Marcus tried to pull away, but found he couldn't. The energy flowing between them was growing stronger, and now it felt less alien, warmer, almost familiar. Princess Lyrelay sat up slowly, her gaze fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made his knees weak. When she spoke, her voice was like music. "Who are you, strange one, and why does your touch feel like coming home?" The room was dead silent. King Thalorian stared at his daughter as if seeing a miracle. The healers looked stunned. Dr. Kim's mouth was hanging open. Marcus realized he was still holding the princess's hand, and that her skin was now completely normal, glowing with healthy luminescence. He tried again to pull away, but she tightened her grip. "Please," she said softly, "don't let go, I can feel it trying to come back." Marcus nodded, understanding instinctively what she meant. The quantum interference wasn't gone, it was being held at bay by their connection. But he could feel it pressing against the edges of his consciousness, alien and hungry. "Your Majesty," he said to the king, not taking his eyes off the princess, "I think we need to talk." The royal council chamber had been hastily cleared of everyone except the most essential personnel. King Thalorian sat at the head of an ancient table carved from what appeared to be a single massive crystal, its surface reflecting the soft light that emanated from the walls. Princess Lyrelay sat beside her father, her hands still firmly clasped in Marcus's. Every time he tried to release her grip, even slightly, the color would begin to fade from her skin, and the crystallization would start to return. Ambassador Voss looked like she was fighting a migraine. "Mr. Chen, I need you to explain to me how a maintenance technician from New Queensland has apparently become the only thing keeping an alien princess alive." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Ma'am, I wish I could explain it. All I know is that when I touched her, something changed. The quantum interference that Dr. Kim detected, it's still there, but it can't seem to establish a connection while I'm in contact with her." Dr. Kim was studying readings from a portable scanner she had trained on both Marcus and the princess. "The bioelectrical patterns are fascinating. Your neural activity is somehow generating interference that blocks whatever's trying to connect to her. It's like you're jamming a radio signal." "But why me?" Marcus asked. "And why does it work?" High Healer Kristen, the eldest of the Zephyrian medical staff, spoke in his melodious voice. "Perhaps we should first determine what exactly we are blocking. Princess, can you describe what you experienced before the human touched you?" Lyrelay's grip on Marcus's hand tightened slightly. "It felt like something vast and ancient pressing against my mind, cold, hungry. It wanted to merge with me, I think, to use my body as some kind of vessel." She shuddered. "It was stronger than anything I had ever felt. I couldn't resist it." "And now," her father asked gently, "now it feels distant, muffled, like hearing a storm through thick walls." She looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Your presence creates a barrier it cannot cross." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks under her intense gaze. "Princess, I'm just a technician. There's nothing special about me." "I believe you are wrong about that," she said softly. King Thalorian leaned forward. "High Healer Kristen, in all our records, is there any mention of such quantum interference? Any precedent for an alien touch having healing properties?" The elderly healer's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a frown. "Nothing in our medical archives, Majesty, but perhaps we should consult the historical records. The older texts sometimes contain knowledge that predates our current understanding of medicine." "How much older?" Ambassador Voss asked. "Several millennia, from the time when our people first developed space travel and encountered other species." Dr. Kim looked up from her scanner. "Your Majesty, if I may ask, has anyone else in your family ever experienced anything like this? Any history of mysterious illnesses or unusual reactions to alien contact?" The king and princess exchanged a look that made Marcus uneasy. "Tell them, father," Lyrelay said quietly. "If we are to solve this mystery, they need to know our family's history." King Thalorian was quiet for a long moment. "Dr. Kim, what do you know of Zephyrian royal bloodlines?" "Only that they've remained relatively pure for thousands of years. Your family has ruled for over 40 generations." "That is correct. But what your briefings did not mention is why our bloodline has remained so stable. Most royal families experience genetic drift over time. Political marriages, distant cousins, sometimes adoption of worthy individuals into the family. Our bloodline has remained unchanged for 4,000 years because we are not entirely Zephyrian." The silence in the room was deafening. Father, Lyreley whispered, "Are you certain?" "They deserve to know, daughter, especially if it will help us understand what is happening to you." The king's ancient eyes met Marcus's. 47 generations ago, our family was blessed by contact with beings from beyond our understanding. They were not gods exactly, but they possessed technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. They granted my ancestors certain enhancements. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. What kind of enhancements? Longevity, enhanced mental capabilities, a deeper connection to the quantum fields that underlie reality. In exchange, our bloodline was to serve as guardians, watching for signs of certain ancient threats. What kind of threats? Ambassador Voss asked sharply. High Healer Kristen answered. The histories speak of entities that exist in the spaces between dimensions, beings of pure thought and hunger that seek to merge with biological forms in our universe. The royal bloodline was designed to be sensitive to their presence, to serve as an early warning system. Marcus felt Lyreley's hand tremble in his. So when the princess became ill, she was not becoming ill, the king said grimly. She was being contacted. The crystallization was her enhanced neural tissue responding to direct communication from one of these entities. Dr. Kim's scanner was beeping rapidly. That explains the quantum signatures. Princess, whatever tried to contact you, it's still out there, isn't it? Still trying to reach you. Lyreley nodded. I can feel it pressing against the barrier that Marcus provides. It's frustrated, angry, and it's getting stronger. Marcus stood up abruptly, but kept hold of the princess's hand. Wait, you're saying that your family was specifically designed to detect these things, and now one of them is trying to use the princess as some kind of anchor point in our dimension. That appears to be the situation, King Thalorian confirmed. Then why can I block it? I'm just a human maintenance worker. I don't have any special abilities or enhanced genetics. High Healer Kristen's expression was thoughtful. Perhaps that is precisely why you can block it. The entity is designed to interface with our enhanced neural patterns. Your mind operates on completely different principles. Ambassador Voss rubbed her temples. This is getting into areas well beyond normal diplomatic protocols. Your Majesty, if there's a threat to dimensional stability, we may need to contact Earth Command and request specialist assistance. There may not be time, Lyreley said urgently. I can feel it adapting, learning to work around Marcus's interference. Each time the connection weakens for even a moment, it probes for new pathways. What happens if it succeeds? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Based on the historical records, the king said slowly, the entity would use my daughter's enhanced physiology as a beachhead to establish a permanent presence in our dimension. From there, it could begin converting other enhanced individuals, spreading its influence until it had sufficient anchor points to manifest physically. And then, Dr. Kim asked, then it would begin harvesting biological matter to construct a suitable form for itself. Our estimates suggest it could consume the entire planetary biosphere within a standard year. Marcus sat back down heavily, so no pressure or anything. Despite the gravity of the situation, Princess Lyreley smiled at his comment. You have a remarkable capacity for humor under stress, Marcus Chen. Is this a common human trait? Some of us are just too stupid to be properly terrified, Marcus replied. Then he realized what he had said and who he had said it to. I mean, forgive me, Princess, I didn't mean to. Please, just Lyreley, and I find your candor refreshing. Most people speak to me in carefully rehearsed phrases. Marcus felt himself blushing again. It's not that I don't respect your position, I just don't know how to talk to royalty. You are doing perfectly well, her smile widened. Better than most courtiers, in fact. King Thalorian cleared his throat. While I appreciate that you are feeling better, daughter, we still have a crisis to resolve. Mr. Chen, how long do you think you can maintain this interference? Marcus considered the question. I honestly don't know, Your Majesty. I'm not tired yet, but I can feel the strain. It's like holding a heavy weight. Eventually, I'm going to weaken. And you cannot let go, even briefly. Every time I try, even for a few seconds, the crystallization starts to return. Whatever this entity is, it's persistent. Dr. Kim looked up from her equipment. Marcus, I've been monitoring your bioelectric patterns. The interference you're generating is actually increasing over time. It's like your nervous system is adapting to counter whatever's trying to reach the princess. Is that good or bad? I don't know. On one hand, it suggests you might be able to provide stronger protection over time. On the other hand, we have no idea what the long-term effects might be on your own physiology. High Healer Kristen moved closer, his tall frame casting strange shadows in the crystal chamber's light. Mr. Chen, may I examine you? I would like to understand how your neural patterns are generating this interference. Marcus nodded, and the healer placed his long fingers against Marcus's temples. The touch was surprisingly warm, and Marcus felt a gentle probing sensation, like someone carefully examining his thoughts. After several minutes, Kristen stepped back with a puzzled expression. Fascinating. Your neural structure is completely incompatible with the entity's contact protocols. But more than that, you appear to have what we might call a null field around quantum consciousness interfaces. It is as if your mind naturally resists any form of external mental contact. Is that unusual for humans? Ambassador Voss asked. I have examined human neural patterns before in the course of diplomatic medical exchanges. This level of quantum resistance is unique. Marcus frowned. What does that mean? It means, Lyreley said quietly, that of all the humans in the galaxy, the entity had the misfortune to encounter the one person who might be naturally immune to its influence. What are the odds of that? Dr. Kim asked. King Thalorian's expression was thoughtful. Perhaps the odds are not as remote as we might think. Mr. Chen, you said you grew up on an agricultural colony. Yes, sir, New Queensland. A frontier world. Limited technology, harsh conditions, families left to survive largely on their own. Marcus nodded. It wasn't easy. Most of the families there had been rejected by the more established colonies, people who didn't fit into the standard corporate structures. Outcasts, the king mused. Individuals who could not or would not conform to the neural patterns that most technological societies encourage. Ambassador Voss was following the king's logic. You're suggesting that Marcus's resistance to the entity might be linked to his background, that growing up outside standard technological integration created some kind of natural immunity. It is possible. Our enhancement technology, and presumably the entity's contact methods, are designed to work with minds that have been shaped by advanced technological exposure. A mind that developed in isolation, learning to be self-reliant rather than systemically integrated. Might be naturally resistant, Dr. Kim finished. It's an interesting theory. Marcus felt Lyreley's hand squeeze his gently. Interesting or not, it appears to be working. The question is, what do we do next? I cannot hold Marcus's hand indefinitely. Why not? Marcus asked, then immediately realized how that sounded. I mean, if it's keeping you safe, I don't mind. Lyreley's luminescent skin took on a slightly different hue that Marcus suspected might be the Zephyrian equivalent of a blush. That is kind of you, but hardly practical in the long term. King Thalorian stood up abruptly. High Healer Kristen, how long would it take to access the deepest historical archives, the records from the time when my ancestors first encountered the entity guardians? Several hours, Majesty. Those archives are sealed in the quantum vaults beneath the palace. Begin immediately. Dr. Kim, I want you to continue monitoring both my daughter and Mr. Chen. If his interference patterns are evolving, we need to understand how and why. Yes, Your Majesty. Ambassador Voss, I suggest you contact your government. If we cannot find a permanent solution, Earth may need to prepare for the possibility of dimensional incursion. The ambassador nodded grimly. I'll send a priority message immediately. As the others began to leave to carry out their tasks, Marcus remained seated beside Lyreley, their hands still joined. The chamber grew quieter, though he could feel the weight of guards and servants moving in the corridors beyond. Are you afraid? Lyreley asked softly. Marcus considered the question. Terrified, he admitted, but not for the reasons you might think. What do you mean? I'm afraid of failing you, of letting go at the wrong moment and watching you crystallize again. I'm afraid of whatever this entity wants to do to your world. He paused. I'm afraid that I'm not smart enough or strong enough to help solve this. And what are you not afraid of? Marcus looked at her delicate features, at the way the light played across her blue-tinted skin, at the intelligence and strength he could see in her eyes. I'm not afraid of staying here as long as you need me to. She smiled again, and Marcus felt something warm spread through his chest. You are remarkable, Marcus Chen. I do not think you realize how remarkable. I'm really not. I fix machines for a living. You fixed me. That's different. Is it? She tilted her head, studying him. You approached an impossible problem, identified a solution that none of our experts had considered, and implemented it despite significant personal risk. How is that different from fixing a broken machine? Because you're not a machine. You're... Marcus trailed off, realizing he was about to say something that would probably get him thrown in a Zephyrian prison. I am what? She asked gently. You're amazing, he said simply, and I don't want anything to happen to you. The silence that followed stretched for several heartbeats. Then Lyrelay spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus. Yes. I do not want anything to happen to you either. Before Marcus could respond, the chamber's main doors burst open. High Healer Kristen strode in, his usual calm composure replaced by obvious urgency. Princess, Mr. Chen, you must come immediately. We have found something in the archives, something that changes everything. Marcus helped Lyrelay to her feet, careful not to break their contact. What did you find? The true reason why your family was enhanced, Kristen said to the princess, and why Mr. Chen's interference is so effective. He paused, his crystalline features grave. The entity your ancestor encountered was not the first of its kind to attempt dimensional incursion. It was the last survivor of a war it lost to beings whose neural patterns are remarkably similar to Mr. Chen's. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. You're saying that humans, not humans as they exist now, but their ancestors. The archives describe a species that fought and defeated the entities in their own dimension before they could establish beachheads in ours. A species that developed quantum resistance as a survival trait. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. Is it? Lyrelay asked quietly. You said yourself that your colony was made up of outcasts, people who could not conform to technological integration. What if that resistance was not just cultural, but genetic? What if your people are the descendants of the very beings who drove these entities into exile in the first place? Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. If that were true, then his presence here was not a coincidence at all. It was an echo of an ancient war playing out across space and time. And somewhere in the quantum depths between dimensions, something ancient and hungry was growing very, very angry. The ancient archives beneath the royal palace were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The chamber stretched beyond the reach of his eyes, filled with towering crystalline formations that hummed with stored information. Each crystal held the accumulated knowledge of generations, their surfaces flickering with patterns of light that seemed to respond to the presence of observers. Marcus walked beside Lyrelay through the narrow pathways between the archives, their joined hands the only thing keeping her condition stable. King Thalorian led the way, followed by High Healer Kristen, and a retinue of palace scholars who moved with the reverent care of people handling priceless artifacts. The deepest records are kept in the center, the king explained as they walked. Information so old that we are no longer certain which parts are historical fact and which have become legend. How old? Dr. Kim asked, her voice echoing strangely in the vast space. The oldest crystals date back nearly 8,000 years, to the time when our people first achieved faster-than-light travel and encountered other species. Marcus felt Lyrelay's hand tighten in his. Ever since they had left the council chamber, he could feel her tension growing. The entity's pressure against his mental barriers was increasing, becoming more focused and aggressive. It was learning to work around his interference, probing for weaknesses. Are you all right? He asked quietly. The connection is getting stronger down here, she replied, her voice strained. There is something about this place that amplifies quantum resonance. The entity can reach me more easily. King Thalorian overheard and stopped walking. Perhaps you should wait above while we... No, Lyrelay said firmly. If the archives contain information about this entity, I need to be present. My enhanced neural patterns may allow me to interpret records that others cannot access. They continued deeper into the archives until they reached a circular chamber at the very center. Here, a single massive crystal rose from the floor like a frozen pillar of light. Its surface was covered in patterns so complex that looking at them made Marcus's eyes water. The Master Archive, High Healer Kristen said reverently. It contains the collective memories of our most ancient rulers, including the first king to receive enhancement from the dimensional guardians. How do we access it? Dr. Kim asked. The traditional method requires a member of the royal bloodline to establish direct neural contact, the king replied. But given Lyrale's current condition, I can do it, Lyrale said. Marcus's interference should protect me long enough to retrieve the information we need. Marcus looked at the massive crystal, then at the princess beside him. What exactly does direct neural contact involve? I must place my free hand on the crystal's surface and open my mind to the stored memories. The process normally takes only a few minutes, but in my current state, she trailed off. The entity will try to use the connection, Marcus finished. It will see the neural link as an opportunity to break through my interference. King Thalorian nodded grimly, which is why perhaps we should seek another method. There is no other method, Kristen said. The Master Archive responds only to the enhanced royal bloodline. Without that specific neural signature, the crystal remains inert. Marcus studied the towering formation, his engineer's mind working through the problem. What if we could amplify my interference somehow, create a stronger barrier while the princess accesses the archive? How? Dr. Kim asked. Marcus examined their joined hands, thinking about the quantum patterns Dr. Kim had detected. You said my neural resistance is increasing over time. What if we could accelerate that process? Give my brain a stronger signal to work with. High Healer Kristen tilted his head. What are you suggesting? I'm not sure yet, but there has to be a way to boost the interference without breaking the connection. Marcus looked around the crystal chamber. What about using the archives themselves? All this stored quantum information, could we use it to amplify my natural resistance? King Thalorian and Kristen exchanged a look. It is theoretically possible, the healer said slowly. If we could create a resonance loop between your neural patterns and the archive crystals, the accumulated quantum energy might strengthen your interference field. But, Marcus prompted, hearing the hesitation in the healer's voice. But the process would be extremely dangerous. The archives contain thousands of years of accumulated psychic energy. If your mind cannot handle the amplification, the feedback could cause permanent neural damage. Or death, the king added bluntly. Marcus looked at Lyrale, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What are the alternatives? We continue as we are and hope that my father's diplomatic contacts can find another solution before the entity breaks through your interference, she said. But Marcus, I can feel it growing stronger. I do not think we have much time. How much time? She closed her eyes, and Marcus could feel her testing the strength of the entity's influence. Hours, perhaps less. Marcus made his decision. Then we try the amplification. Marcus, no, Dr. Kim said immediately. The risk is too great. There has to be another way. What other way? Marcus asked. Every minute we waste, this thing gets stronger, and when it finally breaks through my interference, it won't just take the princess. It will use her to establish a foothold in this dimension. How many people will die while we're looking for a safer solution? Lyrale squeezed his hand. He is right. This is our best chance to learn how to defeat the entity permanently. I will not allow fear for my safety to doom my people. King Thalorian was quiet for a long moment. Very well. High Healer Kristen, what do you need to attempt this amplification? The next hour was spent in preparation that felt like a cross between surgery and an occult ritual. Kristen and his assistants arranged smaller archive crystals in a precise pattern around Marcus and Lyrale, each one positioned to create what the healer called resonance nodes with Marcus's neural patterns. Dr. Kim monitored everything with her medical equipment, clearly unhappy with the entire procedure, but unable to offer a better alternative. Ambassador Voss had returned to the surface to coordinate with Earth Command, leaving strict instructions that she be notified immediately of any developments. The theory is sound, Kristen explained as he made final adjustments to the crystal array. Your natural quantum resistance creates a specific interference pattern. By amplifying that pattern with stored psychic energy, we should be able to create a barrier strong enough to protect Princess Lyrale during her contact with the Master Archive. And if it doesn't work, Marcus asked, then the feedback will likely kill you instantly, the healer said with clinical honesty. Marcus nodded. Good to know. Lyrelay turned to face him, their hands still joined. Marcus, you do not have to do this. There may be other options. Name one. She was quiet for a moment. You could return to your ship, leave our space entirely. The entity cannot follow you beyond our dimensional boundaries. And leave you to face this alone. I am expendable. My death would be tragic, but it would not doom the galaxy. If you die attempting this amplification, we lose our only effective weapon against the entity. Marcus stared at her. Did you just call yourself expendable? I am one person. The entity threatens billions of lives. You're not just one person, Marcus said firmly. You're brilliant, brave, and kind. You care about your people enough to risk everything for them. The galaxy would be a poorer place without you in it. Lyrelay's luminescent skin flushed with color. That is perhaps the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. I meant every word. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other until King Thalorian cleared his throat. If you are both ready, we should begin. The entity's pressure is increasing. Marcus could feel it too, a cold, alien presence pressing against the edges of his consciousness. Whatever this thing was, it was definitely getting stronger. I'm ready, he said. Kristen activated the crystal array with a touch, and immediately Marcus felt power flow through him. The sensation was indescribable, like being struck by lightning, but instead of pain, he felt his awareness expand. The quantum interference he had been generating unconsciously suddenly became clear and controllable, like a muscle he had never known he possessed. The amplification is stable, Dr. Kim reported, her voice tense. Neural activity is off the charts but within acceptable ranges. Princess, Kristen said, you may begin. Lyrelay placed her free hand on the Master Archive's surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Light cascaded through the crystal, and the chamber filled with harmonic resonance that made the air itself seem alive. But along with the light came something else. Marcus felt the entity's presence surge, no longer distant and muffled but immediate and overwhelming. It pressed against his amplified barriers like a storm trying to tear apart a building. It's fighting harder now, Marcus said through gritted teeth. It knows what we're doing. I can feel it too, Lyrelay said, her voice strained. But I am also receiving the archive data. The memories are incredible. Images flashed through Marcus's mind, not his own thoughts, but somehow shared through their connection. He saw ancient starships unlike any he had ever imagined, beings of pure energy moving through space without technological aid, and wars fought across dimensions that normal matter could not even perceive. I can see the first contact, Lyrelay reported. My ancestor, King Verilan, encountered beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. They were refugees from a great war in their home dimension. The images intensified. Marcus saw creatures that looked like living shadows battling beings that radiated light and thought. The shadow creatures were the entities, beings of pure hunger that consumed conscious minds to fuel their own existence. The dimensional guardians were dying, Lyrelay continued. The shadow entities had destroyed most of their kind, but they managed to establish outposts in several dimensions to watch for any entities that might escape into our reality. Marcus felt the entity's assault on his barriers growing more focused. It was learning to adapt to his interference patterns, finding ways to slip through the gaps. There's more, Lyrelay said urgently. The Guardians enhanced certain bloodlines to serve as sentinels, but they also left behind something else. Weapons, tools designed specifically to fight the entities. Where? King Thalorian demanded. The images shifted, showing a hidden chamber deep beneath the palace. Marcus could see devices that looked like a fusion of technology and art, their surfaces covered in the same flowing script that decorated the palace walls. The Guardian Vault, Lyrelay whispered. It has been sealed for millennia, waiting for the time when the entities returned. The entity's presence suddenly surged, breaking through a section of Marcus's barriers. Lyrelay screamed as crystallization began to spread up her arm from the point where she touched the archive. Break the connection, Kristen shouted. No, Lyrelay gasped. I am almost through to the activation sequences. I can see how to open the vault. Marcus poured more of himself into the barriers, drawing on the crystal array's amplification until his head felt like it might explode. The entity was vast and alien, and filled with a rage that spanned eons. It had been imprisoned in the spaces between dimensions for thousands of years, and now it sensed freedom within its grasp. But Marcus had grown up fixing things that everyone else said were beyond repair. He had learned to be stubborn, to keep working even when the odds were impossible. And right now, he had something worth being stubborn for. "I've got it," Lyreley shouted. "The vault can be opened, but it requires two types of neural signatures, one enhanced Zephyrian and one natural quantum-resistant pattern." "Both of us?" Marcus asked. "Both of us working together." The entity made one final, desperate assault on Marcus's barriers. This time, instead of fighting it, Marcus did something that surprised even himself. He redirected the entity's own energy back through the quantum link, using its attack to strengthen his interference field. The crystal chamber blazed with light as the feedback loop created a resonance cascade through the entire archive system. The entity's presence suddenly snapped back, retreating to whatever dimensional space it inhabited, clearly stunned by having its own power turned against it. Lyreley pulled her hand away from the master archive and collapsed against Marcus. The crystallization on her arm cracked and fell away, leaving healthy, glowing skin beneath. "Is it over?" Dr. Kim asked. "No," Lyreley said, breathing heavily. "It is only the beginning, but now we know how to fight back." Marcus helped her to her feet, noticing that she seemed steadier now, less dependent on their physical connection for protection. "The amplification process," she explained, seeing his questioning look. "It has strengthened your natural resistance. The entity can no longer break through your interference, even without the crystal array." King Thalorian stepped forward. "The Guardian Vault, can you find it?" "Yes," Lyreley said. "But Father, the weapons it contains were designed for a war between dimensions. Using them will have consequences far beyond just defeating this one entity." "What kind of consequences?" Marcus asked. Lyreley looked at him with an expression that was equal parts hope and fear. "The kind that might change the balance of power in the galaxy forever, and the kind that will definitely mark both our species as targets for any other entities that might still exist in the void between worlds." Marcus considered this. "So we're talking about starting a war we might not be able to win." "Yes." "Against enemies we barely understand." "Yes." "To protect people we care about." Lyreley smiled, and the expression transformed her face completely. "Yes." Marcus nodded. "Then let's go find that vault." The Guardian Vault lay deeper beneath the palace than Marcus had thought possible. They had been descending through crystalline corridors for over an hour, following passages that seemed to exist outside normal geometry. Sometimes the walls curved in directions that shouldn't have been possible, and twice Marcus was certain they had walked through spaces larger than the mountain that contained them. "Dimensional folding," Lyreley explained when he mentioned this. "The Guardians built their vault in compressed spacetime. From the outside, this corridor is only a few meters long. From the inside, it extends for kilometers." Marcus's head was still pounding from the neural amplification, but the effect had been worth it. He could feel his quantum resistance humming like a tuned engine, and the entity's presence was now completely blocked from reaching Lyreley. She walked beside him without need for physical contact, though she stayed close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. Each time that happened, Marcus felt a small spark of something, connection maybe, or just the lingering effects of their shared neural experience in the archives. Either way, he found himself looking forward to those brief touches more than he probably should. King Thalorian led their small group, which included High Healer Kristen, Dr. Kim, and a squad of the Royal Guard. Ambassador Voss had remained on the surface, coordinating with both the Zephyrian government and Earth Command. The political implications of everything they had discovered were staggering, but for now, the immediate threat took precedence. "Tell me about these weapons," Marcus said as they walked. "What exactly are we going to find in this vault?" "The archive memories were incomplete," Lyreley replied. "But I could sense devices designed to manipulate dimensional barriers, tools that could reach across spacetime to strike at entities in their native realm." "Sounds dangerous." "Everything about this situation is dangerous," King Thalorian observed. "The question is whether we can control these weapons well enough to use them effectively." Dr. Kim looked up from her scanner. "Princess, I'm still detecting quantum resonance patterns around you, but they're different now, more stable. Whatever the amplification process did to Marcus, it seems to have created a permanent barrier around you. Marcus tested the interference field he could now consciously control. It felt solid, unbreakable. The entity definitely can't reach her anymore, but I'm worried about what happens when it realizes that and starts looking for other targets. Other enhanced individuals, Kristen said grimly. There are 12 royal bloodline members currently alive on Zephyria Prime and several dozen on other worlds. Can we protect them all? Not with my current abilities, Marcus admitted. This interference field seems to work at close range, maybe a few meters at most. I can't project it across an entire planet. Lyreley was quiet for a moment. Perhaps the Guardian weapons will provide a solution. If we can strike at the entity directly, eliminate it at its source, then the threat to other enhanced individuals disappears. They reached a section of corridor where the walls were covered in flowing script similar to what Marcus had seen in the palace, but far more complex. The symbols seemed to move and shift, rearranging themselves as the group approached. The vault entrance, King Thalorian said. It is responding to Lyreley's presence. A section of wall simply wasn't there anymore. Not opened, not moved aside, just absent as if it had never existed. Beyond lay a chamber that made Marcus's breath catch. The Guardian Vault was a sphere perhaps 50 meters in diameter, its walls covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Floating throughout the space were dozens of objects that defied easy description. Some looked like crystalline sculptures, others like technological devices that belonged in a fever dream. All of them pulsed with soft light and hummed with barely contained energy. By the ancestors, Kristen whispered, the legends were true. Lyreley stepped into the chamber, and immediately several of the floating objects began moving toward her. They circled around her like curious pets, their humming increasing in volume and complexity. They are scanning me, she said with wonder, reading my neural patterns, my genetic structure, my quantum signature. One of the devices, something that looked like a metal flower made of liquid silver, drifted down to hover in front of Marcus. He could feel it probing at his mental barriers, testing the interference field he had developed. I think it approves, he said as the device spun in what seemed like a pleased manner. Dr. Kim was scanning frantically, her equipment struggling to process the readings. The energy levels in here are off the scale. Whatever these things are, they're operating on principles that are completely beyond our current science. King Thalorian approached a larger device near the center of the chamber. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but seemed to be made of crystallized light. High Healer, can you interpret any of this? Are there operational instructions? Kristen was studying symbols that appeared and disappeared along the chamber walls. Some of it is similar to our most ancient texts, but much is completely foreign. I believe we need to activate the chamber's interface system. How? The same way we access the Master Archive. Direct neural contact from both an enhanced bloodline member and a quantum-resistant individual. Marcus and Lyreley exchanged a look. Together again? He asked. It seems our neural patterns are uniquely compatible with Guardian technology, she replied. Perhaps that is not a coincidence. They moved to what appeared to be a control interface, a smooth crystal surface surrounded by floating symbols. Marcus placed his hand on one side while Lyreley touched the other. Immediately, the entire chamber came alive. Information flowed through their shared connection, but this time Marcus was prepared for it. The data was vast and complex, but his enhanced interference ability allowed him to filter and process it without being overwhelmed. He could sense Lyreley doing the same, her enhanced neural patterns complementing his quantum resistance. Images and concepts flooded their minds. They saw the Guardian civilization at its height, beings of energy and thought who had transcended physical form eons ago. They witnessed the war against the shadow entities, a conflict that raged across multiple dimensions and resulted in the near extinction of both species. But more importantly, they learned how the weapons worked. Dimensional resonance disruptors, Lyreley breathed, her voice filled with awe. They create quantum frequencies that destabilize the entity's existence in non-corporeal space. And this, Marcus said, his attention drawn to the humanoid device of crystallized light, is a Guardian template. It can create a quantum echo of the original Guardians, giving us access to their knowledge and abilities. The flower-shaped device is a targeting system, Lyreley continued. It can lock onto entity signatures across dimensional barriers and guide the disruptors to their targets. Dr. Kim was recording everything. Can you understand how to operate them? Marcus tested his connection to the Guardian template. It responded immediately, recognizing his quantum resistance as a key component. I think so, but using them is going to require both of us working together. My resistance provides the stability needed to channel their power, while Lyreley's enhancement allows for precise control. There is more, Lyreley said urgently. The entity that has been trying to reach me is not alone. The interface is detecting quantum shadows, other entities still trapped in the void between dimensions. If we attack the one targeting me, we may draw the attention of the others. King Thalorian stepped forward. How many others? Dozens, perhaps hundreds. The war that the Guardians thought they had won, it only scattered the entities, trapped them in dimensional prisons. They have been waiting for millennia for a chance to break free. Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. So if we use these weapons, we may trigger an invasion, Lyreley finished. Every surviving entity converging on our dimension at once. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of the Guardian devices. Marcus could see the dilemma clearly. They could eliminate the immediate threat to Lyreley and Zephyria Prime, but doing so might unleash a catastrophe that would threaten the entire galaxy. What if we don't use them? Dr. Kim asked. What happens if we leave the entity alone? It continues to grow stronger, Kristen replied. Eventually, it will find a way around Mr. Chen's interference. When it succeeds in possessing the princess, it will have a foothold in our dimension. From there, it can begin calling its companions anyway. So we're looking at an invasion either way, Marcus said. The question is whether we face it on our terms or theirs. Lyreley was studying the information flowing from the Guardian interface. There may be a third option. The weapons can be configured for different types of strikes. We could attempt to eliminate all the entities simultaneously before they have a chance to coordinate a response. How? A dimensional cascade. Use the resonance disruptors to create a chain reaction that destabilizes the entire void realm where the entities are imprisoned. Marcus felt the weight of that possibility. We're talking about genocide, wiping out an entire species. A species that wants to consume all conscious life in our galaxy, King Thalorian pointed out. That doesn't make the choice easier. Lyreley's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. Marcus, I understand your reluctance, but these entities are not like us. They are not individuals with hopes and dreams and families. They are collective intelligences driven by pure hunger. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. How do you know that? Because I felt its mind when it tried to possess me. There was no personality there, no individual consciousness, only endless consuming need. Marcus closed his eyes, trying to process the impossible decision they faced. When he opened them, he found Lyreley watching him with an expression of complete trust. What do you think we should do? He asked. I think, she said quietly, that sometimes the only way to protect the people you care about is to make choices you never wanted to make. Marcus nodded slowly. The cascade option, how long would we have to prepare? The Guardian interface estimates several hours to properly configure the weapons. But Marcus, once we begin the process, there will be no turning back. The entities will sense what we are doing and attack with everything they have. Can our defenses hold them off for that long? Lyreley consulted the flowing data. If we work together, using the Guardian template to amplify our combined abilities, we should be able to maintain a protective barrier around the planet. But it will require us to remain connected to the interface for the entire duration. Connected how? Neural link, full synchronization. Our minds essentially merged through the Guardian technology. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. Full neural synchronization was about as intimate as two beings could get. They would share everything, thoughts, memories, emotions, the deepest parts of themselves. Is there another way? He asked. No, the cascade requires precise coordination between quantum resistance and enhanced neural patterns. Any deviation or hesitation could result in the weapons missing their targets. Dr. Kim looked up from her scanner. What are the risks? Neural burnout, permanent psychological damage, death. Lyreley's voice was matter-of-fact. The Guardian template was designed for their physiology, not ours. Using it may push our minds beyond their safe operational limits. Marcus stared at the crystallized light figure of the Guardian template. It hung in the air before them, beautiful and alien, and offering power that could save the galaxy at the cost of their lives. "Your Majesty," he said to King Thalorian, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Of course. If this cascade succeeds, if we eliminate the entities, what happens to Earth's relationship with Zephyria? What happens to the balance of power in the galaxy when people learn that humans have the ability to resist and fight beings that your enhanced bloodlines cannot?" The king was quiet for a long moment. "You are asking whether your people will be seen as saviors or threats." "Both, probably, and I need to know if you'll support us when others start fearing what we can do." King Thalorian looked at his daughter, then back at Marcus. "Mr. Chen, if you and Lyrale succeed in eliminating this threat, you will have earned the eternal gratitude of not just Zephyria, but every inhabited world in the galaxy. I will personally ensure that Earth receives the protection and support it deserves. And if we fail, then none of this will matter, because the entities will consume us all." Marcus nodded. He looked at Lyrale, seeing his own fear and determination reflected in her luminous eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Are you?" Marcus smiled despite everything. "No, but let's do it anyway." Lyrale smiled back, and Marcus felt his heart skip. That may be the most human response I have ever heard. "Is that good or bad?" "It is perfect," she said, and placed both her hands on the Guardian interface. Marcus did the same, and the world exploded into light and impossible sensation, as their minds merged through technology older than their civilizations. And somewhere in the void between dimensions, ancient hungering things began to scream. Marcus had thought he understood what neural connection meant. He had been wrong. When their minds merged through the Guardian interface, it was like stepping from a single room into a vast cathedral of consciousness. He could feel Lyrale's thoughts intertwining with his own, her memories becoming accessible as if they were his own experiences. More startling still, he could sense her emotional response to sharing his mind, wonder, warmth, and something deeper that made his consciousness flutter like a bird in flight. "This is remarkable," her voice came to him not as sound but as direct thought. "Your mind is so structured, organized, like a perfectly designed machine." "Yours is like music," he replied the same way, complex and beautiful and constantly changing. The Guardian template had activated the moment their minds synchronized, and Marcus could feel ancient knowledge flowing through them. The crystallized light figure expanded around them like a cocoon, its surface becoming transparent to reveal the true scope of what they were attempting. Through their enhanced perception, Marcus could see the dimensional void where the shadow entities existed. It was a realm of twisted spacetime, where the normal rules of physics held no meaning. Hundreds of dark forms moved through that space like living black holes, each one radiating hunger and malevolent intelligence. "They know we are here," Lyrale observed. Already, the entities were beginning to converge on their dimensional prison's boundary, seeking the source of the Guardian technology's activation. "How long do we have?" "Minutes before they organize a coordinated assault. Hours before the cascade weapon is ready to fire." Marcus could feel the weight of that timeline. They needed to maintain their neural link and power the Guardian defenses while configuring weapons designed by a civilization that had transcended physical existence, all while under attack by beings that had spent millennia planning their revenge. "No pressure," he thought, and was surprised to feel Lyrale's mental laughter in response. "You maintain that humor even in the face of galactic extinction. I find that comforting." Through the interface, Marcus began configuring the resonance disruptors. The Guardian template provided knowledge, but the actual implementation required human intuition and problem-solving. Each weapon needed to be precisely calibrated to target specific dimensional frequencies, creating a cascade effect that would destabilize the entire void realm. Meanwhile, Lyrale worked on the targeting system, her enhanced neural patterns allowing her to lock onto individual entity signatures across dimensional barriers. Her mind was perfectly suited for the complex calculations required, processing quantum equations that would have taken Marcus hours to work through. "Marcus," she said suddenly, her mental voice tense, They are beginning their assault. He could feel it through the Guardian interface, a pressure building against the dimensional barriers, like a dam beginning to crack under enormous stress. The entities were no longer content to wait in their prison. They were actively trying to break through into normal space-time. Can the barriers hold them? For now, but we need to begin redirecting power to the defensive systems. Marcus felt the Guardian template respond to their need, drawing energy from sources that existed outside normal matter. Power flowed through their linked consciousness, and he suddenly understood why full neural synchronization was necessary. The Guardian technology was alive in its own way, responding to thought and emotion as much as to conscious control. Time until cascade configuration is complete, he asked. 3 hours, 47 minutes. Outside the vault, Marcus could sense activity throughout the palace. King Thalorian was coordinating with planetary defense forces, while Dr. Kim and High Healer Kristen monitored their life signs from the chamber entrance. Ambassador Voss had established contact with Earth Command, and emergency protocols were being activated across human space. But all of that felt distant compared to the intimate connection he shared with Lyreley. Through their neural link, he could experience her memories as if they were his own. A childhood spent learning ancient languages and quantum mathematics, the loneliness of royal isolation, the weight of knowing that her entire existence was shaped by genetic modifications made millennia ago. In return, she experienced his memories, growing up on a struggling farm, learning that survival meant fixing whatever broke with whatever was available, the satisfaction of solving problems that others considered impossible. She felt his genuine wonder at seeing other worlds for the first time, and his deep-seated belief that every person deserved to be treated with dignity regardless of their status or species. Your parents raised you well, she observed, as she experienced his memories of family dinner conversations about treating everyone fairly. You learned empathy along with engineering. You learned duty along with quantum theory, he replied. You were shaped to serve others before yourself. Perhaps that is why we work well together. Both of us were taught to value others above our own comfort. The first real attack came without warning. One of the shadow entities managed to partially manifest in normal space, reaching through dimensional barriers like a hand punching through paper. Marcus felt its presence as a wave of cold that seemed to freeze his soul. The Guardian defenses responded automatically, channeling power through Marcus's quantum resistance to create a barrier that the entity couldn't cross. But the effort required was enormous, leaving both him and Lyreley drained. That was just a probe, Lyreley warned. They are testing our defenses before launching a full assault. How many more times can we do that? Perhaps 6 or 7, before our neural patterns begin to degrade. Marcus focused on the cascade configuration, working faster as he felt more entities gathering at the dimensional barriers. The targeting system was nearly complete, but the resonance disruptors still needed precise calibration for each individual entity's signature. Lyreley, can you maintain the defenses alone for a few minutes? I need to concentrate completely on the weapon's configuration. I will try. Marcus felt her consciousness withdraw slightly from their shared mental space, taking full control of the defensive systems. The Guardian template responded by channeling more power through her enhanced neural patterns, and Marcus could feel the strain it placed on her mind. You are pushing yourself too hard, he observed. So are you, but we have no choice. Through the quantum sensors, Marcus detected movement in the void realm. The entities were no longer probing individually. They were forming some kind of collective formation, preparing for a coordinated breakthrough attempt. How many, he asked. All of them. Every surviving entity is converging on our dimensional coordinates. Marcus felt his concentration slip for a moment. Hundreds of shadow beings, each one capable of consuming entire planetary populations, were about to assault their position simultaneously. Marcus Lyreley's mental voice was urgent. I need you to see something. She shared an image through their link, Dr. Kim and High Healer Kristen working frantically at monitoring equipment outside the vault. Both of them looked exhausted and worried. Our life signs are deteriorating, she explained. The neural synchronization is putting more strain on our bodies than anticipated. How much time do we have? Perhaps an hour before permanent damage occurs, 2 hours before neural death. Marcus felt cold fear wash through him, not for himself but for her. Lyrale, maybe we should. No, her mental voice was firm. We finish this. If we fail, everyone we care about dies anyway. I was going to say maybe we should work faster. He felt her surprise, then warmth. Even facing death, you think like an engineer. Find a solution, implement it, worry about the consequences later. Is that bad? It is one of the things I love most about you. The thought hung in their shared mental space for a heartbeat before they both realized what she had said. Marcus felt emotions flow between them. Surprise, embarrassment, and something deeper that made his consciousness shine brighter. Lyrale. Focus on the weapons asterisk, she said quickly. We will discuss feelings later, assuming we survive. Marcus threw himself into the configuration process with renewed determination. The cascade system was incredibly complex, but his enhanced mental abilities allowed him to see patterns that would have been invisible before. Each resonance disruptor needed to be calibrated not just for individual entity signatures, but for the quantum resonance between multiple entities. I think I understand, he realized. The entities exist in a collective state. They share consciousness across dimensional boundaries. If we can target the resonance that connects them rather than the individuals themselves, we could destabilize their entire collective with a single coordinated strike, Lyrale finished. Marcus, that is brilliant. Working together, they reconfigured the targeting system to focus on the quantum threads that connected the entities rather than the entities themselves. It was like aiming for the web rather than the spiders. Destroy the connections, and the entire structure would collapse. The second major assault came just as they finished the retargeting. This time, a dozen entities attempted to manifest simultaneously, tearing holes in the dimensional barriers through sheer force. The Guardian defenses responded with power that made the chamber's crystal walls ring like bells. Marcus felt the energy flowing through their linked consciousness, and for a moment he wondered if this was what it felt like to be a god, channeling forces that could reshape reality itself. But the cost was enormous. He could feel Lyrale's neural patterns beginning to fray under the strain, and his own quantum resistance was being pushed beyond its designed limits. Status on the Cascade weapons, she asked through their link. 90% configured, maybe 15 more minutes. And our chances of surviving that long? Marcus assessed their current neural degradation rates against the power requirements for maintaining the defenses. The mathematics were not encouraging. 50-50, maybe worse. I can live with those odds. Lyrale, if we don't make it. We will make it, she